I will call the meeting of the Haverford Township Zoning Hearing Board for January 20, 2022 session. At the table to my far left is Jessica Vitale, a voting member.
Good evening.
To her right is Ed McGargy, a voting member. To my right is Jesse Boynton, a voting member. The chairman, Bob Kane, is not available tonight. To my left is our solicitor, Bill Malone. Our court stenographer is Arlene LaRosa. And on the side table is Kelly Kirk, our zoning officer, and Margie Buchanan, our deputy zoning officer. Before we begin, can we rise and do the Pledge of Allegiance? Repeat after me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So on the agenda tonight, we have one new case, Z22-01, Amazon Retail LLC of 403 Westchester Pike, Havertown, Pennsylvania 19083. Applicant and equitable owner by way of lease is applying for one variance from this board under the zoning ordinance for the installation of a wall sign. The variance is from section 182-701.f.1b1 to permit a net signage area of 164.62 square feet, where 50 square feet is the maximum permitted, and 108.5 square feet is existing. The subject property is located at the Lanark Shopping Center, 403 Westchester Pike, Havertown, PA 19083, in the C5 Shopping Center Commercial District, tax parcel number 22020129700, and it's in the second ward. Who's here on behalf of the applicant to speak? Yep, come up to the microphone, please.
Good evening. Bryce McGuigan from Begley, Carlin, and Mandio, here on behalf of Amazon Retail, LLC.
Bryce, as you heard Mr. Rhodes state, we are typically a 5-member board. However, tonight we are a 4-member board. Leaves you with 3 choices on behalf of the presentation. One is to understand that 4-member board can vote, but a 2-2 tie would result in a denial of the application. You could secondarily present the case and have the chair read the minutes or the transcript from today and vote as well at a future date, which then would have a 5-member board voting. Or third is to continue the matter until you have a full 5-member board. I know we've talked about this on the phone. Can you just, for the record, identify what you would prefer to do?
Thank you very much. Yes, we have talked about it, and the applicant is more than ready to move forward today with the 4-member board.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bryce is okay?
Yes.
Bryce, will you be the only one testifying, or will the applicant or anyone else, do you plan to bring it forward as a witness?
Yes, I have Mr. Gary Potts of Professional Permits, who is one of the professionals associated with this matter. He will be testifying today, and I will be making a brief opening, hopefully, opening and asking some questions, and that's going to be a presentation.
It's a little tough as a lawyer to ever say you're going to be brief,
Yeah.
so I'm just,
I
never know.
I shouldn't have said that. Knock on wood.
Okay, no. Okay. All right, so why don't you tell us what you'd like us to hear, and we'll get to your witness as you like.
Thank you very much. Good evening, board. Thank you very much for having us here tonight. Again, like I mentioned, my name is Bryce McGuigan, attorney for the applicant, Amazon Retail LLC. The property that we're here for is located within the Lanark Shopping Center at 403 Westchester Pike. It's zoned in the C5 Shopping Center District. Specifically, it used to be the LA Fitness. That's where Amazon's going into. What we intend to do specifically is to open it's approximately 30,000 square foot Amazon Fresh grocery store. For those who are not aware, an Amazon Fresh is just a grocery store. There are some where it's, I believe there's been newspaper articles about this over the past year or two, where you walk in, get all your food, and just walk out, and it automatically charges it to your Amazon account. This is not one of those. This is just a regular old grocery store. It just so happens to be an Amazon Fresh grocery store. The use is permitted by right within the shopping center commercial district. In fact, what we're doing, it's a rather simple project. We're going into the building that used to be the LA Fitness, just re-outfitting it. Footprint stays the same. Exterior, apart from looking a little bit more up to date, stays the same. The parking lot stays the same. We're using the existing parking lot and the existing lighting fixtures and everything else. So the only changes we're making are interior, superficial, and we're adding a new sign. And that's what we're here for today, the sign. Because within the shopping center commercial district, the ordinance only allows for a total of 50 square feet of signage. The LA Fitness that existed before us had a 108.5 square feet of signage. They had a variance for that large of a sign. What we're asking for is a 164.62 square feet of signage. Now, as you can see from the signage packet that we submitted, and we're going to go through some of those pictures here in the presentation that I have before you tonight.
We do that so that people can.
Sure.
Yeah, what I can do, how about this? I'll just go through this a little bit, and then with my witness, we can go through it in more detail.
Yeah, so my suggestion is why don't you go through the exhibits, and then with your expert or your witness, we can just simply indicate that he has heard your commentary, and he's adopting and accepting that as his testimony as well.
I think that will work well. Thank you very much. All right, so let me move to slide 2 of our exhibit packet here. So slide 2 shows the old LA Fitness that I'm sure many of you are aware of. Just shows how the building used to look, how the sign used to look. That is the 108.5 square foot sign. Now, the current situation, if you look at slide 3 now, currently, like I said, the exterior of the building has been modified. It's been updated. All those little cutouts and contours of the old 1980s, 1990s style LA Fitness are gone, and now it's just a plain black backing. What we plan to do, and these photographs, these renderings are taken from the signage packet that's part of our application.
If I could, just, do you want to identify these each individually, or do you want them just simply as one packet as applicant 1?
We'll do packet, yeah. So this will be applicant 1, so this is slide 4 of applicant 1. So this is going to be the sign. This is what we're here for today. So if you look, the sign itself, like I said, it measures total 164.62 square feet. However, the actual amount of sign, or the amount of text within that size is smaller. There's no illuminated overall backing. As you can see, it's just going to be the words Amazon, Fresh, and then the smiley face with the arrow underneath.
So looking at that, is it fair to say that to the left of Amazon Fresh, there is a significant portion that will remain black/blank?
Correct.
Is it the applicant's understanding that if they ever want to put something there, should this board approve this application, they would have to come back for another variance to put additional wording, signage, displays, whatever in that area?
That is correct. It is the applicant's understanding that if we wanted to add any signage, whether it was to increase this sign or to add an additional sign, we would need to come back before this board and get additional approvals. And one thing I would like to point out, within slide 4 of applicant 1, you see right next to the entryway, if you look to the right, there's a circular sign saying just walk out. That's not going to be there. That was from a prior iteration where it looked like this might have been the walk-in, walk-out variety of the store. It's not going to be that, and there's going to be no separate sign there. We are here only for one sign, the main sign. So this is what we intend to, this is what we're proposing here today. Now, this proposal, it's keeping in line with what Amazon Fresh is opening all around the country. There's countless examples of this. Mr. Potts, who's here with me tonight, he has worked on between 90 and 100 just Amazon Freshes in his time working in conjunction with Amazon. And if you look here on slide number 5, these are 3 separate examples of other Amazon Freshes that have opened that have opened in the last several months. As you can see, it's the same general design, Amazon Fresh and the symbol, with large blank canvases next to it, and then with no self-illuminated backing behind it, so you just have the black backing. So what we're asking to do here is the very same as what's going on in every other Amazon Fresh that's being opened.
So when you say no illumination, am I correct that there is no background illumination of the sign and there's no intent to put forward lighting onto the sign?
So it will be a self-illuminated text. The sign will be self-illuminated text. It will not be an illuminated overall backing with, that you would see on certain other signs. I think some of the ones here, they have lights above it that shine down if you look in the middle picture, but I believe the left and the right show what ours would look like, which will have a self-illuminated, but the only thing that will be illuminated will be the actual text itself and the smiley face.
And what would be the hours of illumination?
The hours of illumination, I believe, would be not only regular business hours, but I believe it would be illuminated. Gary might have some more information about this, but I believe it will be illuminated all the time.
So even when the store is closed, the intent would be to have it illuminated?
I believe so, but I'll double check on that for you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure that the board will want to hear about that.
Right, and once I'm done this part of the presentation, Mr. Potts can answer some of these questions, some of the more technical questions that, like I said, he's been around the block a little bit with Amazon Fresh, so he'll be able to shed some more light on that. But again, what we're asking for here is no different than what's the standard Amazon Fresh branding, standard Amazon Fresh sign. It's a very contemporary look, very simple, and it's one sign. It's not like we're filling that whole facade. It's just one simple sign. Separately, the only other, actually let me back up. The only other thing that the only other sign that's going to be present is going to be on the monument, which as you can see on the left was the existing or the prior with LA Fitness, and on the right is Amazon Fresh. Inarguably, it will be less text, that sort of a thing. However, we don't even need a variance for this. I'm just showing to be transparent and to show exactly the signage that you will see associated with this new business. What I would also like to point out is what we're asking for is not uncommon here in Haverford Township or within the C5 district. Right across the way with Lowe's, with Kohl's, each of those businesses needed variances for their signage as well. However, like I said, all we're asking for is the one wall sign, and that's the sum and total of our relief here today. Like I said, I have Mr. Potts, Gary Potts of Professional Permits. Gary is a professional who's been in the industry for several decades now. He's done between 80 and 100 Amazon Fresh grocery stores, including some in our local area, I believe in Broomall and Ben Salem, which is up in Bucks County. Like I said, Gary's done between 90 and 100 of these projects. He's been involved in the preparation and design of the signs and the signage packets you see before you here tonight. Gary would testify that, again, this is the size of the sign is necessary for Amazon Fresh to operate. It's necessary for passing motorists to be able to see and to provide that notice this business is indeed there. There's a recessed parking lot, so you need a bit of a larger sign in order to account for the extra distances away from the road. And what he would also say is that, again, the sign is adapted to the actual surface. It is not, an overly large sign or anything like that. It fits within the facade, which, again, we've modified it since the old LA Fitness. Again, when you take away some of those contours, some of those additional, the texture on that again was, I guess, in vogue back when the shopping center was created. Now it's a blank black canvas. And again, when you see this, you're going to see that there's going to be a tremendous amount of free space. The sign is really truly fit for the space that it's going to be put on. And it's something that's, again, very common amongst the business and amongst, the overall shopping center community. With that, Gary, if you want to come on up. Yeah, that's. Mr. Potts, could you please?
Hold on, we'll have to swear him,
Oh.
right? And do you want to voir dire after
He's
us?
going to voir dire.
Okay, all right. So, Mr. Potts, can you state your full name and address for the record?
Certainly. My name is Gary Potts. My offices are located at 58171 Dragonfly Court in Osceola, Indiana.
Okay. And can you raise your hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right. Mr. Potts, thank you for being here tonight. I know you're a little bit far away from home, so we appreciate you making the trip. Have you had the chance to listen to everything that I just told the board?
I have.
All right. Did you understand everything I said?
I did.
All right. Do you agree with everything I said?
Yes.
All right. If I asked you questions here tonight, would the substance of your testimony mirror what I told the board?
Yes.
All right. At this time, would you care to add anything else to supplement what I told the board?
The only thing you were asking about sign illumination, the hours of operation of the store are going to be 7 to 10. So I believe 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. I believe the LA Fitness had to be turned off at 11. So that would be sufficient for the wall sign to be turned off, on an hour before and off an hour later.
So you would be agreeable to not have the sign on 24 hours a day, like the illumination part?
Yes.
Okay.
And I appreciate that. Now, apart from that comment, anything else you'd like to add?
No, I can answer any questions that the board would have, and I guess if we get to that point.
Well, why don't we,
Beat me to it.
before we get there, why don't we do a little voir dire, just, are you offering him as the fact witness or an expert witness?
Well, we'll do both. So, Mr. Potts, could you explain where do you work right now?
I'm the owner of Professional Permits, and so we do permitting and variance work and code research for the sign industry primarily. We've been in business for 16 years. We've done probably over 1,000 variances across the country and probably somewhere in the range of 5,000 to 6,000 code check researches. What we do with Amazon is we go evaluate the site, figure out what the sign code is, if there's any variances existing for the property, then we develop a sign package based on code and work with our client, which is Atlas Sign. They come up with the sign package based on the code, the layout of the property, any aesthetics, traffic concerns. So if we have a 4 or 5 lane road in front of it and vegetation, that would also take into consideration the size of the sign versus if it was just sitting and we had a new development and there's no trees in the front, we would take that into consideration as well. Looking at this site, when we put it together, obviously, we looked and we noticed that we have some mature trees along the drive. We have some trees in the median, so it also is a recessed site with a large offset from the road. So we determined that this would be the appropriate size for the facade. The Amazon Fresh sign is always oriented over the entrance. So while we have a large facade on the front of the building, that's why it's a stacked letter set, as that helps direct customers to where to go in.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potts. I appreciate the extra testimony. And at this point, if the board has any questions, either myself or Mr. Potts will be more than
Can you
happy.
give me a little bit of a breakdown of your educational and professional experience in this industry?
Sure. I have, as I said, I've done probably over 1,000 variance meetings, attended variance meetings. I've prepared permits for certain vendors like CVS Pharmacy, Amazon, Walgreens, Phillips 66, Gulf, to name a few. Some of the major corporations in the country, they hire us to go and do the research to find out what code allows and help them develop their sign packages.
And so how did you get into the industry itself?
I broke into the industry. I was actually the business manager under the former owner, and it was about 6 years ago, he called me up and said he wanted to sell, so I purchased the business from him. Was familiar with the property and familiar with the work, so
Okay. And you've indicated perhaps an approximation of 1,000 variances that you've been involved with. Can you approximate how many of those you were accepted as an expert witness in the field?
Between New Jersey, which I know requires legal representation, and Pennsylvania, I would say probably 30 to 40.
Okay. And you don't hold any specific certifications or licenses in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, state of New Jersey, state of Indiana, or elsewhere, such as a professional engineer would. Is that fair?
That is correct.
Okay. Nonetheless, have you ever been denied the ability to testify as an expert by any zoning board?
I have not.
That's all the questions I have, and I do think that the testimony is sufficient to provide this individual as an expert in the field of signage.
All right, anyone, everyone okay with admitting him as an expert witness?
Yes.
Okay. Jesse, you all right? Okay, so admitted as both a facts and expert witness.
Thank you very much, sir. And like I said, at this point, if the board has any specific questions, we'll be happy to answer those this time.
Actually, the only other question I have is, and you did a good job, Bryce, but I do have the one critical question. Do you accept and adopt, as if it was your own testimony, all the statements made by Bryce in his opening?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Bill. So let's see, Jessica, do you want to start first?
Sure. So you mentioned that you've done 90 to 100 of the Amazon Fresh stores.
Yes.
Is this sign an average size sign, this smaller than normal, larger than normal?
Typically, it is 200 square feet for the wall sign is what they usually want. This one and Ben Salem, I believe, are the exact same size. So for the most part, when they put these together, as long as there's no any code issues, it's around 200 square feet. It just really depends on the facade size. So if it's not tall enough to fit, this one isn't tall enough to fit a 200 square foot sign, so that's why we went with the lower size.
What's the smallest size sign that you've done?
The smallest size sign that we have done on the front elevation is 134 square feet, but it was a much smaller building.
Okay. I don't have any other questions.
Okay, Ed?
Yeah, I'm looking at we didn't label them as exhibits, but it is the picture of the sign on the building and the front elevation of the building.
And since we're going to mark that initial packet as A1, why don't we just mark that as A2?
Okay, this will be A2. There is a box that says allowable per code, two wall signs per elevation, allowable 400, proposed 164.62, which doesn't seem to match with the application or the sign here.
That was erroneously added by the art design team. So that is all incorrect.
So
We don't want to
this-
mislead.
that
Yeah,
box
no,
would
I
be-
don't want to mislead the board. All of that is not correct.
Okay, thank you. The signage from it's a little concerning to me. Lanark, this is a shopping center that we're located in here. How many stores are in that shopping center?
I don't know exactly, but judging by page 4 with the multi-tenant sign, there's 3 tenants on the sign. So I'm assuming, and it's only an assumption on my part, that there are 3 in there. But that could be totally wrong.
Okay. So, yeah, we do have a monument sign, and that sign, is that visible from the road? Does it have the same restrictions you're talking about on the building?
That sign is visible from the road, however, that's a separate signage, part of your signage ordinance, so that that's not included within the 50 square foot amount.
No, okay, I agree with you. But it does factor into the fact that you need to have a larger sign so they can visit from the road when you can already see the monument sign, which is already not, the only reason it's accepted here is because it was given a variance previously. So it's not an approvable thing with two signs necessarily. All monument signs have to be approved as a variance as well. To my knowledge. So, LA Fitness had a sign that was already double the size of our ordinance, and they were in business for quite a while, and I think they've relocated. Do you have any justification for why their sign at 108 square feet wasn't large enough?
Sure. Their sign, if we were to do a 108 square foot sign, the font size, that would be about a 30% reduction in size. And you're looking at a sign that was going to run parallel to traffic. So that when you take a wall sign into consideration and you look at the International Sign Council studies on real world situations where they take people in cars, they drive them by signs, they have a legibility index. So for a 100 square foot sign, the font size on the Amazon and the Fresh would be too small to be safely read by motorists.
I understand that, but that goes back to my first comment in which you have another sign that directs the traffic in, and I was thinking more of this sign to be in a large shopping center where you have multiple stores, and once you're in the parking lot trying to figure out where that store is this sign has to, the main purpose I would think for this sign is to direct the people to the front door and not from the traffic coming down the road, since you have another sign that does that.
Actually, on a commercial sign package, when they lay out the property, they do take into consideration facades as part of traffic. So that is, while the monument sign does lend wayfinding, the wall signs are also part of that consideration. And that's where the legibility index for the United States Sign Council comes into play.
In the sign the council that does that, did they require any type of visual measurements to verify whether it's even visible from the road, from other buildings that would block it, from the trees that we were talking about that would block it, whether that the size of the sign is the total reason for why you have to have it larger?
Basically, what they did is they took 120 participants and put them in a car and drove them around to various sites versus if it was rural or it was urban, downtown. Different traffic situations, different speeds of the speed limit, and they had a recorder in the car. And this was done by Penn State University. So when the person would recognize the sign, they would click a recorder, and it would measure the distance from the sign, the car was, and all of that, and then that's how they came up with their matrices. So that is all taken into consideration.
I appreciate that. But was there any study that you did specifically for this location that makes it justify that those standards apply to this site? There isn't any other mitigating factors or any other factors that would reduce the visibility?
The fact that it's a divided road in front, there is vegetation in the tree lawn, and there's very large mature trees in front of the road, or in front of the site at the curb. Those all take into consideration the fact that even the monument sign has reduced visibility when those trees are in bloom, when they're full of vegetation.
Okay, but there's no measurement or anything?
There are no, there's nothing to measure. We just take it, we just look at the site and evaluate it.
Okay, that's all I have.
All right, Jesse?
Okay, yes. So just to get look at some of the numbers, I was crunching some of the numbers here. So the existing sign is 108 square feet, which was approved by a variance, and that's more than double the allowable. Your proposal is 164.6, which is 329% over, and it's 150% more than what's there now. Did you study looking at the sign, I know you just testified that you felt the font size was too small, but did you actually generate a elevation showing what a 108 square foot sign would look like?
I did not.
Do you know if that was ever done?
Not to my knowledge, because, like I said, when we evaluate the sign and take into consideration the font sizes, we knew that it wouldn't work from our calculation.
Could you elaborate on the hardship that you face if this variance wasn't granted?
If I may, because I believe that's, let me, maybe I can address that a little better. So in terms of hardship, what I would say is the fact that the property or the existing building, because again, we're not making exterior changes, we're not tearing down the building, putting up another one or anything like that, or changing any of the walls. Where the existing building is, the fact you're dealing with that recessed parking lot, the fact you're dealing with a lot of these mature trees like Mr. Potts referenced, we don't want to change any of that. That's something that actually, the trees and the foliage, that lends itself to the area. You want that in a shopping center, but that causes some issues in terms of visibility. The recessed parking area, again, causes some issues in terms of visibility, and there's also a practical issue. Now, again, this isn't referenced by, or this isn't anything implicated by the property itself, but if you look at the Amazon Fresh logo, the fact that it's stacked text and it's not long-wise, it's 2 different layers plus the symbol. When you compare it to LA Fitness, which I have here on slide 2, LA Fitness is just one level of text. It's also part of it's a thicker font too. So the fact that they might be able to make 108.5 square feet work, and then you go to ours, when you look at, let's just go to slide 5, which shows existing Amazon Fresh stores. I don't want to say self-created, but the fact that this is just what our logo is, the fact that we're dealing with this stacked text, it's when you shrink the text, people can't read it, and that's part of the issue. And if you look what we're trying to do in the measurement, how we measure this, again, there's a lot of dead space in there. We're not filling it with text. This is not 164.62 of chunky text all across a building that just dominates it and is obscene to the eye. This is something that, again, it's a smaller amount of text in that space, and it's something that we're not doing it because, it's not like they're trying to be greedy here or anything. This is just something that fits the building, fits the background, the black background that we created, and something that people can actually see. And people aren't straining their eyes to say, what is that? What is that new? Is that a grocery store? Is that, we don't know what it is, and causing issues.
I think Mr. Poynton's question, though, is the hardship that's being presented here, and I know we're talking about a dimensional variance as opposed to a use variance, but is the hardship that bring it any smaller will not sustain the viability of the business in terms of location and identification?
Yeah, the hardship is multifaceted. From a pure property perspective, it's the fact that it's a little bit of a recessed parking area that we're dealing with. The fact of the actual sign itself, it's a safety matter where if we shrink it too much, it causes a matter of an issue for safety for passing motorists. It's also a matter of being able to be competitive within the sphere of supermarkets. And if we have to shrink this to match the ordinance or to match someone like LA Fitness, we'd be at a competitive disadvantage to other similarly situated restaurants. That's a different night's hearing, grocery stores.
If I may, grocery stores, to me, seems like that's a regular customer who knows where once you know where the grocery store is, you're not worried about knowing the sign to draw you in. Do you have a sense of how much traffic is generated just casually versus people who are going there as a destination?
I don't have those numbers. I don't. What I will say is that signage obviously is paramount to any business. Signage is one of the most important things for a business. That's why someone like Amazon Fresh hires Mr. Potts to come out here from Indiana and to do all of the legwork for a sign. You know, you or I would think of a sign and go, okay, well, what looks nice? But there's far more to it than that, especially for a new business like Amazon Fresh that hopes to come to your community.
Yeah, I don't know that I have another question. I would kind of like, I would have liked to have seen a comparison showing the 108 versus the proposed 168, just to kind of have that visual comparison. I think that would have been a useful exhibit.
Yeah, I understand, and in hindsight, I wish we had that for you too. I think one of the reasons why that wasn't addressed is because it's simply, like Mr. Potts said, he's done near 100 of these, potentially 100 of these, and the smallest sign they've done is 134 square feet, so they've never even done a 108 square foot sign with Mr. Potts involved in the project. And the reasons for that, again, involved the fact that a 108 square foot sign wouldn't be able to be safely seen from the roadway, which defeats the purpose of the sign.
And I guess I did think of one other question. If you were not able to have 164 square foot sign, would this project not go forward?
I would have to talk to the client about that. I do not know.
I have no further questions.
So I had a couple questions. The wall sign, given that the building is recessed, that in the summer mature trees obscure view, who's it for? Who is supposed to see this sign at whatever size, on that spot on the building that we are being asked to give a variance for?
Well, it's for the motorists, obviously. But obviously
But
as you're driving,
you've testified that the mature trees create a
Yes.
hardship,
correct.
and they're a factor in the sizing. But it would sound to me that the implication of that point is that motorist views of the building are obscured by mature trees.
Correct. That is why we're asking for the relief to have a larger sign. It's not 100% obscured. It doesn't create a total privacy, but there are points where the sign is invisible, and you have to quickly identify that sign. So you have a hardship because you have signs or trees spaced along the drive, and you have certain windows, whereas if typically you might have a 300-foot window, you don't have that here.
And are there any plans to remove trees?
Not to my knowledge. That would have to be up to the landlord.
Okay. How would the applicant feel if the decision was to grant a variance and it was conditioned upon maintaining the existing trees or planting compensatory trees if you had to remove one for a tree health? Would that be acceptable? Would that be a condition that the applicant could live with?
Again, I don't represent the landlord, but I don't anticipate that being a problem whatsoever.
The repercussion of which would be that if the trees were removed by the landlord, your variance would be, would come back into play.
We understand that, and I don't believe that's unreasonable. Again, that's one of the things that we like about the shopping center too.
Okay, and then.
Amazon is not in the, they're not in the business of going around and cutting down trees. So they're very earth-friendly and very
Yeah, you understand why. I mean, you're suggesting
Absolutely.
that the trees necessitate a sign of this size.
Correct. I understand. Yes, sir.
In the slide 4, which is up on the screen,
This is slide 5.
or slide 5, I'm sorry. There is examples on the left of window signage. If we were to grant this variance, would the applicant be okay with agreeing not to have any additional signage on the building, window or otherwise, other than the one for which a variance has been granted?
I don't know what code allows for window signage.
Well, the code does have different rules for different types of signs.
And what they have up there now is just a temporary opening soon, and that would come down at that space. So it's just more like they have a banner at the site up to the far right.
I just think the question is, and whether it's you or Bryce, can we agree that if the board was to approve this variance, you would not be putting additional signage on the windows?
Yes.
Of any kind.
We can agree to that, and I also believe that a reading of the ordinance would also dictate that no matter what, we would have to come back if we're trying to add any additional signage to the building.
Right, that said, and Mr. Rhodes, the one thing I will say is, if the applicant, if the board was inclined to approve this, would a small sign on the door, just giving the hours of operation,
That's
be
fine,
accepted?
but you know what I'm talking about, I think.
I'm-
You know, commercial, sale, signage, temporary, sandwich boards standing outside the door, window signs, additional wall signs, things like that, that none of those would be, would it be okay for you if we were to grant a variance and condition on, even if it was by right, that you're not going to put up any additional signs?
We would be acceptable with that condition, yes, sir.
Okay. I don't think I have any other questions, but I appreciate your time. Jessica, any other questions? Ed?
I know.
Jesse?
No.
Okay.
I actually did just want to discuss one thing about the internal illumination and.
About what?
The internal illumination of the sign.
Yep.
And essentially an idea or an estimate of how far the glare or light spillage of that would be, and if it would affect any of the residential neighbors in the area.
Sure, if we may. No, I don't have any scientific measurements right now, but I will be more than happy to provide those if the board would like, or if the township would like at a later date. But no, I don't anticipate that. In terms of the actual sign, or in terms of the lighting on the property, it's,
On this question, I think Mr. Potts is probably more qualified to answer the question. And Mr. Potts, in your experience with this type of illuminated lettering, what are the lumens, what's the candle light or whatever, and how far would the light emanate from that?
I don't know exactly the lumens, but I can tell you, given the position of the sign as opposed to the residences, which I believe are to the right of the building, the light over spillage at the property line, the light measurement of foot candles at the property line is going to be probably 0 from that sign.
And do you do those foot candle analyses?
I have in the past, yes, for other variances.
Bryce, I don't want to overcomplicate things here, but this board just wants to make sure they're covering all the bases. Is that something that you could provide in advance of the next hearing? And then we could just simply review that and be ready to vote at the next hearing?
yeah, we could most assuredly do that.
Okay, and then I think the other thing that we would like to see is the facade of the building at, I'd like to see it at the 108 square feet under the current, and also at the, I think you testified 134 was the minimum that you've ever done?
Yes, that was
Yes.
the testimony.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to see
What those would look like?
yeah, if you go back, if you go to slide
There you do 4.
3.
Slide 4?
4. You go to slide 4. I'd like to see that depicted at the two smaller sizes.
Okay.
We could provide that.
Okay. All right, well, we do have some people, do you have anything else that you want to put on as part of your case?
Nothing else.
Okay, so exhibits is admitted, right?
So we have the packet of the slides will be A1. A2 will be the rendering of the sign, I guess
It was-
identified at best as set illuminated channel letters on the top left-hand of that. And then you'll keep the record open for those 2 additional exhibits that you've asked for.
Well, let me, so then there's you're not going to admit this as a,
We could make that that whole packet applicant's exhibit 2. And,
That's fine.
Mr.
so-
Malone, the document you're referencing is page 3.
okay.
Yes.
Yes.
So let's just make sure we understand what A2 then. You're not going to include this?
You may as well. I mean, just for completeness sake, there's,
Is it fair to say that Exhibit A2 will be 4 pages? One is a map depicting the location of the site,
Correct.
regional map. Second is a site plan overhead view of the building and the parking lot showing the property boundaries and the parking spaces.
Correct.
And the third page is this set of illuminated channel letters, and,
I believe it's a rendering of how the
Yeah.
sign would look on the structure.
okay. And it includes an inset box, which is not applicable, relating to allowable and proposed square footage.
Correct.
Right? And then the last page would show depictions of the existing monument sign and the proposed monument sign out front.
Correct.
Okay. And so you are admitting to evidence A1 and A2, is that right?
Correct.
All right.
just the litany.
Yep, yep. So are you otherwise complete with your, what you want to present tonight? We're going to leave the record open for the submission of just the illumination analysis and 2 other mock-ups of the second page, I'm sorry, the third page of Exhibit A2
Correct.
at smaller sizes.
That's what I understand, yes. We'll provide some additional data regarding the actual illumination of the sign, together with updated renderings for the smaller sizes that the board's requested. Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So with that, I will open it up to public comment. Let me first ask, did anyone here receive certified mail and wish to speak? Okay, sir, come on, you want to come up?
No, I just want to say, just looking at
Well, you got to come up, you-
You have to be sworn in if you're going to make commentary.
and you address the board, not the applicant, if you don't mind. So raise your right hand, repeat after me. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
yes.
And your full name and address for the record, please?
David Hawkins, 501 Woodland Drive, Haverford Town, PA.
Okay, welcome, Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you.
What would you like to say? I see you've got your certified mail letter with you.
Yeah, just looking at the elevation here, it's proportionately, it fits, if you look at the entry below, it's directly in line with the outside the edge, the distance above the Amazon, distance below the smiley face is equal. So proportionately, it looks like it works. If it was a different size, it would do something in your brain which make you think that something's not right there. I'm just saying proportionally it works, whether it's within the requirements of the distance it should be or not. Something smaller, I think, would distract from the elevation.
Right? So, Mr. Hawkins, just for the record, it seems like you're in favor of granting a variance to the
Yeah, I don't see any
applicant as
problem with it at
requested?
all.
All right, any questions for Mr. Hawkins? Jessica?
No.
Ed?
No, I do not.
Jesse? Nor do I. Thank you very much, Mr. Hawkins. Okay, so let me just ask the other question. Has anyone in the room received regular mail who would like to testify? Anyone else in the room at all, whether they got a letter or not, who wishes to testify? No. Okay. Bryce, you want to?
Just briefly, so I dug through my file and I found some additional data regarding the actual illumination of the sign that I think the board might be interested in reviewing now while we have it.
Sure.
Right here, so let me,
We're going to mark that as A3.
A3.
That said, we still are going to keep the record open just for the other renderings at least that we talked about.
Thank you.
I don't need, you can just.
Thank you. Of course.
Maybe Mr. Potts can walk us through this.
Okay.
So basically what this does is this is the light layout, which is the LED behind the face of the sign. Each of those letters has a plastic lens that goes over the light source. So if you go down to the bottom of that sign, and I'm sorry for those that are trying to watch it on the screen, there is, for total modules is 216, and total watts is 75.2 watts. So the entire sign is going to output the same illumination as a 75-watt light bulb, which is about 800 lumens, if my calculation is correct.
Mr. Potts, the last line, 178.4 perimeter feet. What is that suggesting?
I believe if you measure all the way around,
Oh, of the side.
all four sides.
Okay, I got it. Okay, Jesse, any questions about this?
Not necessarily, but are we still requesting the analysis to make sure that it's no foot candles at the property line?
Yeah, Mr. Potts, this is helpful, but, the questions was posed in association with the impacts on neighbors of the elimination. Would you still be able to submit to us a candle foot chart that shows where we get to zero? It may well be that it's well before the property line, as you suggested.
Yes.
And it probably is, but it would still be helpful for us to have it for the record.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
We'll still happily provide that.
Okay, great. Okay, Jessica, anything to add
No questions.
on this?
No question.
Okay. Thank you, Bryce. Thank you, Mr. Potts.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna leave the record open for the limited purpose of the additional testimony or evidence or exhibits to be submitted. And then we'll try to render a decision at the next meeting. Yeah, next meeting is February 3rd.
February 3rd. I will bookmark it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. All right, Ed, Secretary, is any other business that we need?
We had minutes, but we had some problems getting them distributed through an email, so we're going to postpone that until everybody's had a chance to look them over.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, and with that then, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.